In 1989, Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas, resigns from S.H.I.E.L.D. after realizing that Howard Stark, played by John Slattery, had been trying to replicate his shrinking technology. Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, has just completed his sentence at San Quentin State Prison in the present day. Upon his release, he is greeted by his former cellmate, Luis, played by Michael P.A., who offers him a place to stay at his apartment. Scott's criminal record makes it challenging for him to secure a legitimate job, and his previous employment history includes uncovering his company's fraudulent overcharging of customers. In response, he hacked into the system and transferred millions of dollars back to the customers. To help him get back on his feet, Luis introduces Scott to Dave, played by T.I., a skilled getaway driver, and Kurt, played by David Dastmalchian, who specializes in identity theft. Luis then shares a tip about a potential robbery that they could carry out as a team. At a presentation for Pym Tech, the company that he founded, Hank receives an invitation to attend. While there, he has an encounter with his daughter, Hope Van Dyne, played by Evangeline Lilly, as well as his former protege, DARREN Cross, played by Corey Stoll. DARREN unveils his prototype of the Yellowjacket suit, which is based on the Ant-Man suit that Hank once wore. However, DARREN has not yet found a way to successfully shrink living tissue. Scott takes advantage of Luis Van to surprise his daughter, Cassie, played by Abby Ryder Fortson, at her birthday party. However, his ex-wife's fiancé, Officer Jim Paxton, played by Bobby Cannavale, is displeased to see him there. Scott's ex-wife, Maggie, played by Judy Greer, informs him that he must acquire a lawful job and fulfill his overdue child support payments before he can visit Cassie again. Despite bidding farewell to Cassie, Jim and his colleague, Gail, played by Wood Harris, demand that Scott leave the party. At Pym Tech, Hope and DARREN are trying to shrink sheep to microscopic size. Their experiment fails, and a sheep is killed. DARREN insists they press forward with another sheep. After realizing that it will take over a year before he can reunite with Cassie by taking a minimum wage job, Scott decides to accept Luis' proposition. Luis informs Scott that his cousin's friend, Emily, played by Lindsay LaRose, is a housekeeper who is dating a man named Carlos, played by Carlos Aviles. Emily has revealed to Carlos that the individual whose residence she cleans possesses a massive safe that almost certainly contains valuables. Scott consents to assist them with the burglary. Luis procures the necessary supplies for the upcoming break-in, and Kurt secures a communication technician's uniform. Later that night, Kurt scales a pole outside of Hank's residence and disables the electrical circuit, causing all phone communication to cease. Meanwhile, Scott enters the premises by hopping over the fence and disabling the window sensors. He then forces open a window and descends to the basement. Upon reaching the basement, he discovers a second door that requires a fingerprint code to unlock. Scott takes Hank's fingerprint using tape and utilizes it to gain entry. When he reaches the safe, he realizes that he will need to employ some inventive methods to break through the steel door. He drills small holes around the lock, pours in water, and utilizes nitrogen to freeze the water. The frozen water causes the steel to warp, and the bolts shoot out. Upon opening the safe, Scott finds only a peculiar-looking bodysuit and helmet inside. He seizes it and departs. Unbeknownst to Scott, Hank has been observing the entire ordeal from upstairs. Feeling disheartened by the lack of valuable loot, the group returns to Luis' apartment. Scott retreats to the bathroom and inspects the bodysuit he stole, wondering why it was so heavily guarded. He notices tubes containing red and blue liquids, and out of curiosity, he puts it on and steps into the bathtub to examine himself in the mirror. While in the bathroom, he spots a red button on the suit's glove and impulsively presses it, resulting in his instant shrinkage to a mere half-inch in height. Just then, Luis barges into the bathroom and turns on the water, which creates a tidal wave for the now tiny Scott. However, he hears a voice emanating from an earpiece embedded in the helmet. Desperately trying to regain his normal size, he presses the blue button, which unfortunately does not work. In a state of panic, Scott jumps away from the water and finds himself soaring across the room. He lands in a crevice and plummets through to the apartment below. In that room, there's a lively gathering, and Scott suddenly finds himself on a spinning turntable, with the needle moving closer to him. He jumps off just in time and lands on the dance floor where people are grooving to the music. Dodging the giant feet around him, he quickly scurries under a nearby door and into the hallway, only to be sucked up by a vacuum cleaner. When the dust bag is emptied, he escapes once again, this time landing on a scurrying rat. As he tries to flee, he inadvertently triggers a mousetrap that sends him flying out of a nearby window and into the pouring rain. With drops as big as his head falling around him, he lands on a parked car, causing him to grow back to his normal size. The impact dislodges the broken blue button, and he realizes he can't shrink back down. After returning the suit to Hank's safe, Scott rushes back home and removes the suit. Upon realizing that he was being tracked, he decides to return the suit to its rightful place. With ease, he breaks into Hank's house again and puts the suit back in the safe. However, when he tries to leave, he finds himself surrounded by police officers. He is arrested and brought to prison, where he encounters Paxton waiting for him. Gale informs Paxton that Scott's lawyer has arrived, even though Scott had not requested one and has no idea who this lawyer is. Scott is presented with two options by the unexpected visitor at the prison. Hank may either spend the rest of his life behind bars or follow his orders. Puzzled, Scott asks Hank to explain further, and he reveals that he intentionally allowed Scott to steal the suit. With this revelation, an army of ants brings the suit to Scott's cell, and he puts it on and shrinks to escape from the prison. As he tries to make his way out, he spots an ant with wings, which he quickly hops onto, and the two take off, flying over the city. Hank explains to Scott that he was the inventor of the suit but had hidden it away due to fear of it being abused. Darren Cross had discovered the shrinking technology, but when Hank refused to give it to him, Darren forced him out of Pym Tech. When Hope had realized the severity of Darren's actions, she teamed up with Hank to stop him. Hank shares his plan with Scott that he needs him to become Ant-Man to prevent people like Darren from causing harm. This realization makes Scott see that he has an opportunity to become a real hero, the type of father his daughter deserves. Scott undergoes rigorous training in martial arts and ant communication to prepare for his mission. He practices shrinking and growing back at the right time, improving his skills. Hank informs him that the key to stealing the suit from Darren is located in an abandoned SHIELD facility, which Scott must infiltrate. However, when he arrives at the building, he realizes it's the current headquarters of the Avengers. Undeterred, Scott lands on the roof, triggering an alarm. Soon, Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie, arrives to investigate, and despite Scott's small size, he is visible to Sam. A fight breaks out, and Scott enters Falcon's jetpack, causing it to malfunction. Using this distraction, Scott successfully steals the equipment he needs and escapes. Hank reveals to Scott the tragic truth about the disappearance of Hope's mother. He explains that during a crisis, he and his wife, who had a suit similar to Ant-Man's called the Wasp, had shrunk themselves to stop a missile. Although they were successful, she couldn't return from subatomic size and was lost in the quantum realm. Scott is taken aback by the gravity of the situation, and Hank tells him that this is why he was reluctant to allow anyone else to use the shrinking technology. After successfully infiltrating Pym Tech, Scott and his team of Luis, Kurt, and Dave work together to steal the Yellowjacket suit. However, they are caught by Cross and his security team. During the ensuing fight, Cross dons the suit and starts to shrink, becoming increasingly unstable due to the effects of the shrinking technology. In a last-ditch effort to stop Cross, Scott enters the quantum realm, where he manages to sabotage the Yellowjacket suit and destroy Pym Tech's laboratory, saving Hope and Hank's lives in the process. After his successful mission, Scott is hailed as a hero and reconciles with his ex-wife and her new husband, Paxton. Hope is given her own Wasp suit and joins her father as his partner, and the three of them continue to work together to protect the world from threats using their shrinking technology. After planting explosives throughout the building, Scott attempts to steal the suit. However, Darren Cross had anticipated the burglary and traps Scott in a glass cage. Darren plans to sell the technology to HYDRA, and Scott realizes the severity of the situation. Despite being caught, Scott manages to break free from the glass cage and defeats the Hydra agents. Meanwhile, Darren escapes in a helicopter from the rooftop just before the building explodes. Hank and Hope escape by using a tiny tank that they turn into full-size to ride out the side of the building. During their fight in the helicopter, Darren dons the Yellowjacket suit, and he and Scott engage in a fierce battle. In the end, both of them are ejected from the helicopter. Scott manages to capture Darren inside a bug zapper, but before he can destroy the suit, Jim Paxton arrives to arrest him. Darren heads to Jim and Cassie's home, threatening their safety to lure Scott into a fight. Scott shows up and the two engage in another intense battle. To stop Darren, Scott realizes he must shrink down to a subatomic level. As he does so, Darren shrinks into nothingness. After defeating Darren and shrinking to subatomic size, Lang is trapped in the quantum realm. However, he hears Cassie's voice and manages to rewire the suit to reverse the process and return to his normal size. After the battle, Paxton is grateful to Scott and covers for him to prevent him from returning to prison. Hank wonders if Hope's mother is still alive somewhere. Meanwhile, Luis informs Scott that Falcon is looking for him. Mid-credit scene, after Lang's departure, Pym shows an upgraded prototype of the Wasp suit to Hope, offering it to her. To which she replies, "It's about damn time." Post-credit scene, Captain America and Falcon have the Winter Soldier in their custody, and are trying to figure out what to do next. Unable to tell Iron Man due to the Accords, Wilson says he knows who to contact for help.